Thank you all for coming today. It's going to be a great conversation about where our energy policy is going. And if you are here, you are interested in this topic, and you undoubtedly know how important energy policy, energy issues are going to be to the midterm elections. We have two exciting conversations here. The first one is going to be with policymakers, two senators and a former senator who are very steeped in this issue. And then the second panel is going to be with thought leaders, also very knowledgeable on the issue. Moderating today will be Darren Samuelson, who is our senior policy reporter for energy. Before we get started, I want to thank the American Petroleum Institute for partnering with us on this, and here to say a few words on behalf of our sponsor and the America's Choice program is Jack Gerard, the president and CEO of American Petroleum Institute.
Thank you, Lois. Well, thank you, Lois, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you, and let us extend our welcome for you being here as well. We're pleased to cooperate and work with Politico on the great American energy debate. As some of you who know what we're engaged in will know that we believe this is a very important debate at this time in the history of our country. I think most of you know today that when we think of it from our vantage point of the oil and natural gas industry, few would have thought just 5 short years ago that the United States today is the world's #1 natural gas producer, surpassing Russia. And it's expected in the next 2 years we will surpass Saudi Arabia as the world's #1 oil producer. So we believe forums like this are helpful to the public discourse, the public dialogue. Particularly, we're looking at things like midterm elections. The great energy debate, we believe, should transcend partisanship, should go well beyond the historic debates of the past, and get us to where, as a nation, we're truly looking at perhaps an unprecedented opportunity to become the world's superpower in energy. So we welcome this dialogue. As Lois has mentioned, we have some great panelists today on a bipartisan basis. We in the API have been talking about this year, as you may have seen our advertising, America's Energy, America's Choice. And we believe it's that fundamental, where not only will we give great opportunity to create new jobs in this country, put people back to work producing our energy, but today in the geopolitical considerations around the world, we have the ability to alter that by exerting our influence in places that we don't need to mention today, but you see it taking place all around the globe. We have a chance in a lifetime, so we thank Politico for their involvement, and we're happy to sponsor, and please enjoy. Thank you very much for being here today. Thanks, Lois.
Thank you again to Mr. Gerard and to API. We're going to start in a second, but just a few things. Darren's going to be taking your questions, but he's going to take them through Twitter. So if you tweet your questions to @PoliticoEvents and use the hashtag energy debate, one word. It should be also on the papers on your table. He will have a tablet, and that's how we'll get your questions. So now, without further delay, I would like to introduce Darren Samuelson.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Darren Samuelson, and I am thrilled to be here on the stage, joined by our distinguished panel. We have Senator John Hoeven, Republican from North Dakota, former Senator Blanche Lincoln, who was a Democrat from Arkansas, and Senator Joe Manchin, Democrat from West Virginia. We have 3 panelists who have been square in the middle of the energy debate over the years. Let's jump right in. Senator Manchin, I want to start with you. We just had a vote yesterday on energy in the Senate, and things came to a crashing halt.
Yeah.
Why can't the Senate even do a simple energy bill? I mean, this was pretty much as simple as you were going to get.
Yeah, that's hard to explain, and those of you who have watched it up close, or those of you who observed it from afar, that's a vote we should have had. We should have had a vote on energy efficiency. We should have a vote on Keystone Pipeline. Those are 2 votes that need to be done. And I know John's worked hard. We worked together on it. It came down last night to a situation where our Republican colleagues and friends asked for 5 amendments, as I understand, on the energy efficiency. Mm-hmm. If those 5 amendments would have been allowed to go forward, then we'd get on the Keystone straight up or straight down clean. I got to the point last night, it was a procedural vote that we had to make, that basically where the majority leader, Harry Reid, said that we weren't going to allow those votes because he kept complaining and hitting a moving target. I had to make a decision. Was it important enough for me to want to get on the Keystone Pipeline to voice my opinion on that vote? So I voted to basically to do that, and other people voted not to do that. So we're at a stalemate, and it's a shame, and the American people are not benefiting by us.
Senator Hoeven, I mean, this was a vote that you've been pushing for just to try and get a Keystone vote. Are you disappointed that we basically couldn't move forward and get onto this bill?
Yeah, I'm disappointed, and of course I'm continuing to work on it, and so is Joe. And I hope there's a way to get there. The problem is, essentially, the vote last night was a procedural vote on whether to allow amendments. And there was no way that Republicans were going to vote to shut down amendments when they weren't allowed any. So then, at this point, Senator Reid has decided to pull the bill from the floor, which is his decision. I certainly hope he'll bring it back. I'm continuing to work with members. I mean, we've got all 45 Republicans are on the Keystone bill that I've authored along with Senator Landrieu. So I hope there's a way to get back to it. But there's some other really pressing energy issues that I think there's strong bipartisan support for. So there may be some possibility to bring people back. There's a lot of support for LNG export on both sides of the aisle. The energy efficiency bill has strong bipartisan support. Obviously, Keystone has strong bipartisan support. So can we either agree to at least get 5 energy-related amendments and move this thing forward, bring it back, move it forward, or can we agree to put some of these things together and get a bill that will actually pass? I'm going to continue to work on it.
Senator Lincoln, you've seen the Senate work up close. It's been a couple of years since you've been out, but I mean, I remember.
I'm leaving it up
if
to
she's
these
seen her
guys.
work, we want to ask and talk to her a little bit.
Yeah, give us a little bit of your
Exactly.
sense of, I mean, I remember there was at least 2 major energy bills that passed in the last decade, but it's been a while. These 2 senators are a little bit newer. I don't think either one were here when we signed the 2007 energy law. And what's the secret? Do you see what's going on in the Senate right now? And is it just broken and it's a pox on both houses at this point?
Well, it's just not goal-oriented. I think I was always goal-oriented. I was always oriented on results and getting results. It didn't have to be everything that we wanted, but we needed to move forward. And I think these gentlemen are saying we got to take some steps forward. We can't wait on everything to happen. And these are some critical steps. They are both absolutely correct. I do remember we did pass a bipartisan energy bill out of the Senate Energy Committee in a very bipartisan way. It was a good bill, had a tremendous amount on energy efficiency. Actually, the Energy Committee staff was amazed. They came to me and said, we can't believe that we are able to actually save more in the energy efficiency in this bipartisan bill. But we never got to,
Right.
we never got to bring it up on the floor.
Let's think about the politics here for a second. And Senator Landrieu, who's only been chair of the Energy Committee for about 5 months now, is already campaigning on the notion that she's been able to bring things home for her state, obviously, before she became chair. The Republicans are saying, though, that her inability to get a Keystone vote shows that she doesn't have any clout. I wonder, Senator Manchin, do you think that this is going to be a problem for Senator Landrieu, being unable to get a Keystone vote, being unable to show?
I would sure hope it's not taken that way in Louisiana, because I think that what Mary brings is a balance, and she's looking for an all-in energy policy, which a lot of us on my side of the aisle, the moderate Democrats, are kind of in the middle here, looking at trying to find a way that we can be responsible to our climate, but also be responsible to the jobs that are needed to run our country. And the two have to work together. Mary does that extremely well. We'll end up getting a vote, and Mary's pushing it, and I think John knows that, and the Republicans have been working hard to know that. But, politics is what politics is.
Talk about the politics of Senator Landrieu, Senator Hoeven.
Well, I'm going to keep pushing for Keystone and for these other energy measures. I think will also, but don't be confused. Senator Reid can bring the bill up for vote anytime he wants. I mean, Senator Reid can bring up Keystone right now. I mean, we can't block him. He can bring up any bill he wants anytime he wants. So understand the facts here versus the spin. Senator Reid can bring up Keystone right now. He doesn't need our approval to do it.
Do you think we're going to see a Keystone vote? Tell me what's next. We're going to see a Keystone vote before the election.
Again, I hope so. I think it's going to come down to whether we can combine some elements like I described, LNG, Keystone, energy efficiency, maybe some things like that, where people agree to get together and there's just enough of us that we're over that 60 threshold and we say, hey, we're pushing this to do it. Or Senator Reid agrees to bring it back and give up 5 amendments. Look, 5 energy-related energy-related amendments on an energy bill is minimal. When Blanche was in the Senate, a bill like that, you'd have unlimited energy-related amendments offered and allowed. So, I mean, we've got to get back. Look, we've had something like 8 amendments we've been allowed to offer since a year ago, last June or something like that. I mean, that's not the Senate. You've got to allow some kind of open process, whether it's on energy or anything else. Here we go on the tax extenders bill today. Are we going to be shut out from all amendments now on the tax extenders bill? How are you going to move legislation if you don't allow some ability to offer amendments related to the bill, relevant, germane amendments?
Senator Manchin, what is wrong with not allowing a couple
Well,
of
no,
amendments?
here, what John's saying is absolutely, I agree in the amendment process, and especially if the amendments are germane in the subject matter. I agree. I'd have been probably voting for every one of the amendments.
Joe not only agrees, he's voted this way to
Now,
get
but here's
amendments.
the thing. Here's where I was, and here's where I still am. It came down to, is energy efficiency important? Absolutely. Is Keystone Pipeline important? Absolutely. If I had to choose, I would give up the amendments on the energy efficiency just to get a vote on energy efficiency. So knowing how we've been operating for the last 3 years since I've been here and John's been here, and I was really determined on getting a vote, then that was the sacrifice you had to make. It's not right, but it is what it is in today's world. So I would have taken that and voted clean up on it too. That's what we come down to, and if that's what it would take again, I will. But I want an amendment process, I agree, but if it doesn't come, I still want to vote.
Senator Lincoln, give us a sense, what kind of advice would you give to a red state Democrat right now running for election here in this 2014 cycle on energy issues? We have Senator Begich, we have Senator Landrieu, Senator Pryor in your home state, Senator Hagan in North Carolina. A lot of states that have kind of not gone the Obama administration way. North Carolina has at some points, but what kind of advice would you give them on energy at this point as you have the Keystone vote, as you have these EPA regulations moving forward that are all factors in a lot of these races?
Well, I think they have to talk about results and goals and what they can do to get there. But I think what they have to really talk about is the opportunity we have as a nation. I mean, we're in a unique opportunity time right now, bringing back our economy. And businesses and industries that are based in this country and that are based in other countries who may want to come here because of those opportunities. They're watching to see how are we going to handle this incredible blessing, this incredible opportunity of energy that we have in this country and what it could mean to putting people back to work, what it could mean to really growing our economy and the things that we want to invest in. Growing that economy would mean that we would be able to put money and resources into the things that mean something to us. So I would say to them, you've got to look and talk about this opportunity, and then you've got to look, the Keystone Pipeline, my gosh, you got Bush and Clinton supporting it. I mean, it's something we talk till the cows come home about improving infrastructure and putting resources into infrastructure. That's what we need. So I think that they've got to talk about it. I think they've got to talk about it from the perspective of if we're going to take advantage of this opportunity, now's the time to do it, and we've got to get some things done.
I heard a really interesting, we talk about the Keystone all the time. I said, please explain to me why you would be opposed to it. Canada's going to produce it, and it's going to go somewhere in the marketplace. If that's the case, I like to have a little bit of control of it if it's coming through America. So that was always my take on it, and still is my take on it very strongly. But I did hear a real perspective I've never heard before. Basically, the amount of damage that we're doing, or the potential damage to the climate right now with taking it out by rail and trucking it, is much greater than if we had the pipeline. This person, a very good colleague of mine, a good friend of mine in the Senate, basically said, yeah, but look at it this way. We think technology will be further developed to allow them to extract it or produce it in a much cleaner, environmentally friendly way 3, 4, 5 years from now. If you build a pipeline now, there's just going to be so much going into the market. So if we can slow it down a little bit until technology. That was a very unique, and it was sincere when he was coming, sincere. I just sincerely disagree, but it was a sincere. I never heard that position before, but there's some people that have that position.
But Joe, the fallacy with that argument is the oil's being produced and moved anyway. It takes 1,400 rail cars a day to move that oil that we're not moving through a pipeline. And look what's happening with the rail cars and the congestion on the railroad, and you have higher greenhouse gas emissions. So his argument is completely flawed. It's producing more greenhouse gas, and it's also creating real issues of rail congestion, and we've had accidents and other problems. So instead of holding up investment that will produce more energy with the latest, greatest technology, meaning better environmental stewardship, let's get this administration and the Congress start to empower that investment. More energy, better stewardship, because you deploy the new technologies.
I tried that argument, John. We still don't have his vote.
Yeah, I know. Well, Joe, I know you've been great on this issue and many others on energy.
Let's jump into the hypothetical for a moment that the Republicans take the Senate in November. It's obviously a lot of time can happen between now and then, but if the Republicans are in control, Mitch McConnell...
But it's a positive thought is what you're getting at.
I want to get your thoughts...
It's a happy thought for the day.
I want to get your thoughts on if House Republicans are still running the show over there, that you're basically putting Obama on the spot on a lot of pieces of legislation. And I wonder, do you think that President Obama, if the Republicans are able to move a Keystone bill through the Senate, through the House, the president would at that point sign it and just say, I'm done with this?
So a couple things. One, I want to come back to what Blanche said just a minute ago. Energy is an incredible opportunity for this country. Yep. I mean, it's jobs, it's economic growth, it's national security. It's not relying on the Middle East for oil anymore. So she hit the high point. That's the big message here when we talk about energy. But yeah, right on. If we don't get Keystone and some of the LNG export and some of these other key energy measures now, we're going to get them next year. Because we're going, even if Republicans don't take the Senate, and then of course it'll be harder, I think we're going to pick up enough pro-energy votes that we're going to move the legislation that we're talking about. Now the key then is vis-a-vis the president is whether we can attach it to legislation that he either doesn't want to or won't veto. That's going to be the key to get by the administration, because the administration has shown that he truly wants to push energy development away from fossil fuels. You cannot delay the Keystone XL pipeline project into the 6th year and tell me that you want to approve it. Actions speak louder than words. And now we've got him saying it's an indefinite delay.
Senator Lincoln, I mean, you've been in government during divided government when the Republicans were controlling the White House, but Democrats had the Senate there after 2006, and you produced the...
I was in a 50-50. Boy, that was awful.
Do you think that a divided government next year would be actually beneficial to President Obama in some respects?
I actually think President Obama will move on it.
You do?
After the election. For some reason, I think that in the last 2 years, there'll be an opportunity at some point to get that done. I don't know why we're waiting on it now.
I don't.
Somebody needs to tell Tom Steyer then that that's
If he was going to move on it, he'd move on it now to help more of the energy-related states that senators are up for, Democrat senators are up for election. If you're going to help them, give them a vote on it.
Yeah, you'd think, but I don't know. I mean, we do energy in this country right. We do it right, whether it's the technologies that we've developed for everything from coal to natural gas to hydro to solar and wind and nuclear. I mean, we do it right in this country, and we need to take advantage of that opportunity.
If President Obama is going to approve this thing after the election, somebody should tell Tom Steyer and it'd save him $100 million.
Bring up Tom Steyer. We have Harry Reid vilifying the Koch brothers repeatedly on the floor. Senator Manchin, what's your take on the way Harry Reid has gone after?
I'm not going to speak for Harry or about anybody else or for anybody else. I come from West Virginia. If you talk about me and then tomorrow you want me to work with you, that don't work very well where I come from. There's more of a civil tone, and you've got to work together, and leaders got to lead, and they've got to work together. You just can't go out in the middle. Koch brothers or Steyer, whoever these people are and whatever their motives are, they have a right. They haven't broke the law. Okay, I might not agree with them on the campaign financing. I think it should be totally transparent, so I know. In West Virginia, you tell me who's spending the money, I can figure out why they're spending the money. Okay, that's all I've asked for. So with this here, I'm not going to villainize. I think it's wrong for Harry to do that. Harry knows how I feel about that. I think it's wrong if Mitch does it. I think it's wrong if any of us do it. John and I, I can't go out and raise money against John, and they expect me to, and go out and campaign in North Dakota against him, and then next week say, hey, John, can we work together on this legislation or that legislation? It doesn't work that way. So if you want to know what's wrong, that's what's wrong with the system.
Senator Hoeven, let me ask you, I mean, John Podesta was recently giving a briefing to the press as the White House released the climate assessment showing regional impacts around the country, and he said that it would create a voter education campaign. It would be something that people might connect with. and galvanize some of the public interest. And I wonder, are you concerned at all that at some point in time, being a skeptic on climate change or being someone who doesn't push as aggressively as where the public might be, that could be a backlash and that could hurt someone running for election? That's certainly something that John Podesta was leading up to there last week.
Really appreciate Joe's comments, and you can see why myself and others really like working with him. So I do want to associate myself with your last comments, Joe. Look, I'm going to go back to what I said just a minute ago. We all want better environmental stewardship. We all do. We all want a clean environment. The question is how you get there. How do you actually make it happen instead of just talk about it? And I believe that when you create a regulatory environment with so much uncertainty and so much red tape, and you tie up not hundreds of millions, but billions and billions in investments that want to go into energy, not only to produce more energy, more dependably, more cost effectively, but also with better environmental stewardship, then you are not accomplishing your goal of better environmental stewardship. And furthermore, remember, we're just one country. So maybe you can tie things up in this country with a bunch of regulation that prevents that investment, but you can't tie up the rest of the countries around the world. But if you encourage that investment and you encourage that technology development and you get these new technologies deployed and demonstrated and show that they are commercially viable, not just technically feasible, then other countries throughout the world will adopt that technology as well, and they'll have better environmental stewardship as well. So are we talking about this, or are we going to go do it?
Going to one of the questions that I have here from the Twitter audience, and I encourage people to tweet a question to us at Politico events with the hashtag Energy Debate. But a question for Senator Lincoln, protecting the climate change without maintaining the United States nuclear fleet. Can you talk a little bit about that?
We can't. I come from a state that has nuclear facilities. I've worked with them. It was something I supported and worked with a lot with Pete Domenici and others. The fact is that, you know, nuclear provides 1/5 of the energy that we use in this country. It is 62% of the carbon-free energy that we use. We can't do without it, and yet it is amazing the onslaught of attacks on, oh, that's a bad word to use, negative approaches to nuclear facilities. We do it better than anybody across the globe. And it's huge. We will never reach those clean air objectives that we have without nuclear power. And yet we're seeing nuclear plants that are closing down. You see what happened with the polar vortex and what happened in the Northeast. Without nuclear in 2 years, we really risk blackouts. So I think what we want to do, I'm working with a group called Nuclear Matters, is to create an educational opportunity to really let people know and understand what nuclear is about, what it means to us in terms of clean air, and what it means to us in terms of energy, and what it means to us as a nation. And we're hoping we'll be able to get that word out and visit with folks about educating them on it.
Senator Manchin, EPA has some regulations coming up for existing power plants. EPA Administrator Gene McCarthy today said those will be out proposed on June the 2nd. You've been trying to stop EPA on a
Well,
number of
really,
fronts.
not stopping, just trying to come to the reality of what we're dealing with. People need to know the reliability of the system. If you all knew how fragile the system is right now, and you put the same amount of pressure that the polar vortex put on the PJM system, which is about 144,000 megawatts of distributed power that they're responsible for, they had, at the best, they had about a 2,000 megawatt cushion out of 144. That's all they had. They're supposed to take off 10,000 megawatts of coal-fired power in that same system this coming year. You have another polar vortex next year, how many people will lose their lives? So we need to start looking at it realistically. Can we fill the void? And then basically, you can look at it from a policy standpoint. How much more do you want to pay for it? So if you're going to alter that, you only have 2 baseload fuels, only 2, nukes and coal. That's the only thing that runs 24/7, rain or shine. Gas is not there yet. Gas will get there. It's just not they can't run. They're not base loaded, but they will be. Those 2, you take one of those off or cut those down dramatically, and you got nothing to fill the void, then the reliability factor becomes such a great concern. It should be for all of us in this room. And I'm just trying to find the balance. If you want me to pay more, fine. Let me know what I'm paying more for. If I can pay a little bit less and still have the same environmental impact, I might take that road. I personally would take that road. But to basically say, listen, we're just going to have to roll the dice here and see if there's any rolling blackouts or brownouts. There is a lot of people, and on the lower end of the socioeconomic ladder, they're going to die. And that's a fact.
Senator Hoeven, do you think that, let's go back to the scenario I threw out there before of Republicans running the Senate, that you could actually stop the EPA, whether it be through a Congressional Review Act, whether it be through budget riders, holding up nominations, some way to torpedo the EPA regulations? You have John Podesta as well saying there was zero chance that you'd be able to stop the EPA at this point.
Well, it would be a challenge. Ed Whitfield passed the bill in the House that you just referred to, and the sponsors in the Senate are Joe Manchin and myself. And that's a bill I think we would be able to pass in a Republican Senate. But you're right, Darren, the challenge then would be, can we get it by the president's veto? So what we'd have to try to do is package it with other legislation. And I think that's the message when you talk about this energy efficiency legislation, and there are others as well. How do we pull some of these things together so that you get enough people on board so that everybody says, okay, look, this is, as Blanche said a minute ago, a big step forward, goal-oriented legislating that helps us with this great energy opportunity.
It's a good bill.
But that's likely what it would take to get by the president, something like that.
Can I say one thing? Just the new source performance standard we're talking about, and someone said we want to stop EPA. I don't want to stop EPA. I don't. I just want them to live in the real world. And all our bill says, mine, Whitfield's, and one John signed on, is take 6 of the best coal-fired, cleanest coal-fired burning plants in America, under 1 year of operation, what we call commercial load, do the emissions testing, whatever those emissions are from the best coal-fired plants in America, 6 of them, then that should be the emissions we should shoot for. That's doable. Don't give me a pie in the sky and something we haven't had technology that gets us to that level and say, this is what you have to hit. That's where our disagreement with Gina and EPA and the administration and the president comes. I said, if we had technology in place and someone says, well, that's great, but I just don't want to pay that much. Well, I'm sorry, you have to or you're out of business. But if you're saying, listen, spend $500 million, and then once you get there, you still might not be where we want you and we're going to take you further, that's what's happening. And I'll give you a perfect example. A 1,500 megawatt supercritical coal-fired plant closed down in my area. Closed down. And I asked the guy, I said, why would you close the plant? He said, Joe, my stockholders and the people I have to answer to from investment, I couldn't tell them how much it cost to keep that plant open because it was a moving target. I never knew where my regulations, I'd have to spend money. The only thing I was assured of, I could tell them how much it would cost us if we closed it. Now that's a shame in America when you've got to make decisions based on that.
Have any of you watched Senator Whitehouse on the floor talking about climate change? He's given about 55, 60 floor speeches at this point. Has anyone seen any of them or taken any of them in?
Sure.
What kind of effect do you think he's had on
I'm going to let Joe answer that one.
We're going to do a little colloquy together, Sheldon and I. And I really think it's good. There's deniers on both sides. On my side, there's people that says, oh, climate's not a problem. Well, let me tell you, 7 billion people, we've had an impact on the climate. And we have a responsibility. And if you don't think so, you're a denier. On the other side, on Sheldon's side, I said, Sheldon, are you a denier? And he looks at me and he says, I said, do you believe that you can continue to run this country and this economy without any fossil or any coal? Or if you do, then you're as bad as the people on my side to have it as a denier. So if we're both to the point where we're non-deniers, can't we work together? So Sheldon and I are going to have this little colloquy. Maybe John will come down and jump in, and we'll have a good time with it.
But looking for the consensus is what has to happen.
Absolutely.
That's how you move forward.
Senator Manchin, you famously shot a hole through the cap-and-trade bill in 2010, I believe it was.
Good shot, wasn't it?
I wanted to ask first, there's been a whole bunch of ads with other candidates kind of doing the exact same thing. Do you get royalties when people shoot water jugs or?
It depends on how many takes they had on that. You know the thing about cap and trade that he would talk, I never could figure out how in the world do you allow the wind, the wind industry, the nuke industry, the hydro industry, the solar industry to trade carbon credits when they don't produce 1 ounce of carbon. So it was a money scheme. It was all money. I said, if you're going to fix something, fix it. Don't just let people play games with the financial institutions and the money moving back and forth. Never fixed a thing.
Senator Lincoln, I chased you around the Senate for many years asking you about that question of cap and trade. Do you feel like at this point we've moved far beyond that and we're never going to probably get back to the kinds of debates that we saw, the McCain-Lieberman debates, the Waxman-Markey debates of the 2000s?
Oh, I don't think there's anything wrong with debate, and I think, you know, these guys are exactly right that something's got to happen. We know that I agree that, you know, that climate change has happened. I mean, there is change, but the fact is we're not doing anything about it because we don't come up with ideas that are implementable. I mean, you look at what EPA's coming out with. Is it achievable? It doesn't exist. We've got to look at things that have to happen. So I think that there should be a debate, and I think it's a good one to be had. But you know, I agree that the extremes are not going to find the solutions to this. It's going to be somebody that's looking for a consensus of how we move forward, step by step, and that's what it's going to take.
Let's look at the rapid climate change since China has come on as a super economic power and what they've done to the climate. And basically, if we're serious about climate, why wouldn't we change our trading policies to extent to where they have to start using some of the things, technology has already been proven. CO2 is not killing people in China. It's particulates right now. And we've cured that in America, and we can do a lot more too. So if we're serious, then this country's serious, this government and this administration's serious, then let's put the money where the mouth is.
And Germany's figured out that they can't get where they need to get doing
all one way.
All one way. It's got to take everybody at all times.
International negotiations are marching on climate change. We have a summit in New York for the United Nations General Assembly this year where climate's going to be front and center for the first day. And next year in Paris, or suburbs of Paris, they're hoping to reach a post-Kyoto agreement. Senator Hoeven, how much do you think the Senate is going to be monitoring what's going on and setting limits for President Obama as he goes forward and tries to negotiate something?
Well, I think it, listening to Joe and to Blanche and this question again makes me think of how do you get those technologies out there worldwide that really are going to improve the environmental stewardship, whether it's emissions or anything else. And that's really what we're talking about. And I think that, a carbon tax approach, whether you call it cap and trade or something like that, and this current blizzard of regulations that's holding up a lot of these investments, the very things that both Joe and Blanche have been talking about, that's not getting it done. So somehow we're going to have to work not only in this country, but with other countries to get those new technologies out there. And again, I think that goes to creating the certainty that empowers the capital investment that deploys the new technologies for producing energy from all sources. Now, not just saying it, but actually doing it, producing energy from all sources with the latest, greatest technology that gives you the best environmental stewardship.
And just like that, the red light comes on, time has flown. Panelists, it's time to wrap up our conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your very important perspectives with us today.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Okay, now I'd like to welcome our panel of thought leaders to the stage. Plenty of water for you to drink here.
We're covered.
You can bring the horse, but.
Thank you very much. Okay, and now for panel 2, I have on stage Karen Harbert, the president and CEO of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce's Institute for 21st Century Energy, and Gene Karpinski, the president of the League of Conservation Voters. We'll dive right in. Again, I encourage everybody out there in the Twitter world to tweet questions to us at Politico events with the hashtag of energy debate. Interesting conversation that we just heard from the senators. Let me get your reactions first to what you heard. I presume you could hear it backstage, especially the breakdown that we just saw in the Senate yesterday. They can't even do a simple energy efficiency bill. Is that frustrating from your perspective?
Well, I think it's frustrating for the American people that they're seeing their institutions here in Washington just not be able to work so well. And you look at whether it's the efficiency bill, where actually I think Gene and our groups actually agree on that energy bill. If you look at the Keystone bill, well, we're going to disagree on that, but the American people, 70% of them, the Senate voted on the Keystone bill, on the Keystone pipeline before. They supported it, the House supported it, and yet we can't get anything done. So I think there's general frustration that we've got lots of opportunities to make people go back to work, invest, revenue, and we're just saying no. Are we open for business?
Gene, was yesterday a win or a loss for environmentalists?
Well, it's clearly sad that the Congress is broken. As Karen said, this is a bipartisan bill. It was going to take modest steps, but useful steps. And the fact that something that modest couldn't get through, and it was bipartisan, which was great. It's a sad commentary. But it gets cut up in this larger politics, and that's too bad. And that's why, frankly, I know we'll talk about this, that's why the administration has a job to do. For a group who cares about climate change, we don't expect Congress to make progress in the moment we're in. That's why the EPA has a job to do, to take the Clean Air Act, enforce the Clean Air Act, protect our air, protect our water, protect our health.
Do you see at this point, with that Keystone vote that ultimately didn't happen, I mean, if it had come awfully close to 60, maybe fallen just short, tell me, what was your vote count at this point? I mean, and what did you expect to be the message that was going to come out of that Keystone vote?
We remain cautiously optimistic that there would not be 60 votes to override the decision that the State Department and the White House are yet to make. Most people understand that's a decision. We wish the decisions had been made already. We wish the Secretary of State and the President had already rejected Keystone Pipeline. That's pretty clear. By the way, I think neither Ed Markey or Sheldon Whitehouse showed up today, so I think I'm in the minority on that one, on this panel. But we've been clear on that, most importantly, for climate change reasons. The pipeline is all risk, no reward. It's a huge increase in climate change over years. We don't think it should be built. So we don't think the votes were there to override the decision that will be made at some point. And certainly there weren't enough votes for 2/3. We don't even think there are 60 votes.
Mm-hmm.
But most importantly, the State Department has a decision to make, a recommendation to make, and the President has a decision to make. And we remain cautiously optimistic that given all the attention the President has paid appropriately to the issue of climate change, he will reject that pipeline.
I think it's a sad commentary, though, that we have to now rely on Congress to step in and do the administration's job. I mean, they were given the authority to do this. They have the authority to do it. They've had it for 6 years. And just because they can't get it done in Congress, I mean, they were trying to fix a problem that the American people have said, let's go and do this. And so I think that, this is emblematic of a larger problem. It's sort of the poster child of, are we going to be in the energy business or not? And I think, I'd like to sort of change the name of this debate. Instead of it being the great energy debate, it's a debate about great energy. Because we have a lot of great energy in this country. We just need, the political establishment, the policy framework to recognize that and embrace it.
Do you think we're going to get a vote before the election? And how much is the election factoring into Harry Reid's decision to hold off on this and President Obama himself?
Well, I think you heard, I think all three of the members and former member agree that it is all about politics right now. We're in an election year. We all understand that. That doesn't prohibit progress. This still is in the domain of the administration, and they can choose to do it or reject it or delay it. I think they've chosen path 3.
And frankly, we don't think that the particular vote in the Senate is going to affect the politics of November at all, one way or the other. People have voted on this many times. People know where they stand. They've come out in favor or against. Their positions are clear. But the decision is about science and climate change and the risks and the rewards. So it's a decision that the State Department has to make with another country, recommending to the President. That's where this decision should be, and that's where it will remain.
We've seen on the front page of the New York Times business section today was an article about all of the other routes that are trying to move this oil out of Alberta. Do you see at this point the fights they're popping up seemingly all over Canada and all over the United States? It's not just Keystone at this point, right, Gene?
Sure. Look, let's be clear. There's already some of this dirtiest oil on the planet coming out of those tar sands already. But it's equivalent to if you had a fire hose with that pipeline to a few garden hoses here and there. And there'll probably be more of that. And some may go by rail. Some already goes by rail. But it's a much different volume. And it's all about the planet and protecting us from climate change. We need new technologies, the new industries of the future. The less we use those dirtiest oil sands on the planet to pollute the air in the short term, the more chance we have to fight this climate change. So that was on the front page of the business section. Mm-hmm. On the front page of the first section, the New York Times, was about the Arctic ice sheets.
Mm-hmm.
Antarctic sheets, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
This is what this is all about. When we talk about politics and elections, climate change is the most important thing that influences our decisions about where we invest and where we don't invest. And there's sharp contrast in the races around the country because it's about saving the planet. It's about saving lives.
I know this is not a keystone debate, and you probably covered it ad nauseum in a previous panel, but I think what Jean just said is important. It's about the science, right? And we've had a group of people, professionals, that have been studying it for 6 years and have come out with conclusions that they have made to the rest of the administration, the cabinet agencies. Ostensibly, those are the people that have been investing the resources to look at this with integrity, and we have to trust them at their word. They said this is not going to have any, this is minimal environmental impact. It's going to move, this oil is going to be produced. So let's get on with it. I think I'm just frustrated with people just resorting to old talking points. When we have a study in front of us that is about this big, that tells us what the science is, let's move and let's believe it.
On the climate change science, on the article that was on the front page of the New York Times today, or the IPCC report, are you concerned about the warnings? Are we doing enough policy-wise to address climate change? I remember the chamber during the Waxman-Markey and Senate debates came pretty close to encouraging something to move forward. I mean, how do you feel about the climate science at this point? Do you feel like the policies are moving in the right direction?
And interesting, the report that you mentioned that was on the front page of the New York Times, it was also covered in the Washington Post and a number of others, and I think it's important that take the time to read the article. It talks about the causes, which are a little bit different than the way you characterize them. These are very unrelated things that are going on, and we need to think about these things very soberly. Look, I think we take what Senator Manchin said. Every single person in this room, I would challenge, is an environmentalist. We all want clean air. We all want clean water. We want to be good stewards of our environment. And I think the question is, what does that mean? How do we continue to improve? What is the responsibility of industry to continue to invest in technology? What are the right rules that balance quality of life, the economy, the growing dependence on a differing variety of fuels around the world? And we have to get it in balance. But by dictating one singular pathway of action does not guarantee success.
So to be clear on a couple things. So but first of all, on the science on the Keystone Pipeline, the scientists made clear that the pipeline has a 17% increase in emissions. It was the economists that disagreed about whether it would go out anyway. That wasn't a science decision. Secondly, on the ice sheets.
I think the economists would disagree. They think they have a science degree too.
On the climatologists, on the ice sheets, clearly there's a climate change impact. More importantly, the assessment that just came out last week, very dramatic, underscoring what we've known. And we heard the fact that the president has to say in the State of the Union that climate change is a fact, frankly, that's almost like a sad commentary. The fact that we're having, with some members of the Senate, members of the House, a debate about whether climate change is real, that is caused. Everyone will say the climate's changing, but are humans the major cause? Of course we are. The data is very clear on that. But the fact that that's the debate, rather what are we going to do to solve it, is a sad commentary. That's why, frankly, when we look at the politics of the elections, one of our priorities, frankly, is to make sure that some of those folks who are hardcore climate change deniers pay a political price for that. That's what happened in 2012. We spent the most money we ever did on politics, 83% return on investment, beating a lot of climate change deniers. That's our number one priority for this election cycle as well. This is the challenge of our time, of our moment, to solve the climate crisis. Humans are the major cause of that. We need to make progress. If we can't make progress in Congress, I wish we could. We were all in on that Waxman-Markey bill. Then the EPA's got a job to do.
I'd like to say, just on that Washington Post article about this, it did say that the effect of what was happening with the Arctic was going to take 1,000 years to come to life, to manifest itself. I hope to goodness that we can rely on American ingenuity and innovation to solve a lot of these things throughout that period of time. I don't think we should undersell the power of American entrepreneurship to address some of these things. We've addressed every big challenge in our country. And the other thing is I think we have to be careful when we say the science is settled. Because I have to tell you, and I'm sure we all know people that have cancer. We don't want to say the science on cancer is settled. We always want to do better. We always want to know more. We want to have more solutions in the toolbox. I think that's where we come from, which is we don't know it all. So let's continue to invest in understanding how we can best approach this going forward. And I think that's where really the practical middle of the country is yes, we want to do the right thing. We want to do it for the right reasons. And we certainly don't want to bankrupt the economy while we're doing it. And we think we can.
So so to clarify on the science question, just to understand the position. So
sorry, we're taking you
No,
in a different
no,
direction,
okay.
Darren.
It's
This
my
is probably
job
not
is-
at all about politics,
That's right. My job is to throw
well,
the...
this is about, it's more than politics. It's about, obviously, environmental issues and how they play into that. But is the chamber's position, for 30, 40 years, the industry's confused the public with the question of whether, what causes lung cancer? Does tobacco cause lung cancer? 30 or 40 years it took for finally we got to that point. The science is pretty settled. The science, based on scientists, is just as settled on climate change today. I'm just curious, does the chamber agree with the concept that humans are the major contributor to climate change, which is affecting all the things we see, whether it's heat waves, droughts, wildfires?
I'm glad that we're running
rising
for
sea
election
levels.
now. So this is our voting record, right?
I hope we're not debating that core fundamental. We can debate solutions, but I hope we're not debating the core concept, because there are many, 130 odd members of Congress that want to debate the
because there's
science.
lots of important things to talk about, and we're completely and totally on the record, and the chamber's not on testifying here. But I've said, and I've said in the Senate, not 6 weeks ago, I said, look, the climate's changing, it's been changing. Humans are contributing to that, and then we need to start looking at solutions. Okay, and I think we're going to differ dramatically on the solutions of what we need to be doing. And you're going to be voting in one direction, we're going to be looking in another, and somewhere in the middle, there's probably some interesting things we could talk about. But we have gotten into this position of energy or the environment. And quite frankly, we're energy and the environment, because I think you can't do one without the other. And I think America agrees with that. I know that the energy industry agrees with that. They're investing more than any other industry in research and development to develop advanced technologies. So it is part of the moving forward of business.
Sure. And I'll let Darren, you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I would love to.
It's all about you now.
It's about what the energy future looks like 30, 40 years from now, and how quickly we get to that place. Of course, we're going to need energy. The question is, what's the energy mix look like as we go forward? Because maybe some things won't happen for 1,000 years, but things are happening right now. People are dying. People are suffering. The economy is being hit in many ways from the current impacts of climate change. That's what that report's all about. So we can't wait and be satisfied with a very slow pace.
Well,
Sorry, Darren, go ahead.
Let's think about these answers in the context of some politics here. I interviewed Al Gore a couple of weeks ago, and Al Gore, one of the things he said—
Great piece. Right.
One of the things he said was that he didn't think a Republican could be nominated for president in 2016 if he believed in climate change science. Gene, would you agree with the Vice President that basically the Republicans cannot nominate someone of the John McCain ilk, or even where George W. Bush was at the end of his second term?
So I'd like to hope that's not true. Having said that, Governor Romney actually talked about climate issues and challenges. He actually helped shut down some coal-fired power plants in Massachusetts while governor. But as he campaigned to get the nomination in 2011, 2012, he basically became a climate change denier. I saw that interview with Senator. I thought it was a great job. I actually was with a Republican pollster 10 days ago. I asked her that very question. Can a Republican get the nomination and not be a climate denier? And that person said, absolutely not. Sadly, because she actually does work for us, she said, absolutely not.
I think
I wish that were not true.
To go back to sort of where are the American people on all these issues, right? I mean, so forget about going through primaries and all of our political process. The Pew Foundation does a poll at the beginning of the year, every year in January. What are the priorities of the American people? And not surprisingly, for the last several years, the economy, employment, is still at the top. After 9/11, terrorism was at the top. That has fallen down. But it's the economy, then it's energy, and then further down the pike, like it or not, it's just the subject of the poll, you get to climate. And so they're less focused on that as a political issue. They would like to see the other issues addressed.
But they do, I think the majority do believe in the science, I think, at this point.
Right, but I'm saying in terms of where they're looking for electability of candidates, this is where they're looking in terms of issues they want their elected leaders to deal with. They want to deal with the economy. They want us to make sure that when they drive up to their gas station at 6th and Main, that they're not paying $4.50 or higher, that they open their electric bill and they're not caught by surprise, or that they don't open the newspaper and find that President Putin is doing something really stupid that could affect us. And we're having this election in this year and 2 years from now, and we're going to be living in the sphere of how energy can be used as a political tool. And people are going to be looking, are we doing enough here at home to have that affordable, reliable energy? And are we doing enough to keep it in such a way that we have it abundant, we can afford it, and we can use it to our competitive advantage? I think the American people are pretty prescient there. I think Governor Romney was pretty prescient when he looked and said during the debate, what is our biggest threat now? It's Russia. A couple years in hindsight, he looks pretty smart by saying that, right? So, we live in this geopolitically charged energy economy right now, and I think people are looking, are we doing enough to take care of ourselves at home? And they look at energy candidates, basically, I think, through that lens.
So 3 quick points on the polls. One is that, as you said, Darren, if you ask the public, do they think climate change is happening? Are humans a major cause? Yes. Do they support EPA rather than Congress regulating carbon pollution from power plants? 3-1. So the public's on the side of let EPA do its job because they don't trust Congress for all kinds of reasons. They don't trust Congress. So that's very solid. It's absolutely true. It's not on the short list of the top priorities. That's true. But the challenge is when this becomes part of the conversation in an election, we encourage candidates to lean in. You look at the Virginia governor's race. Governor McAuliffe ran the first ever statewide advertising criticizing and attacking his opponent, Ken Cuccinelli, for being a climate change denier who sued the University of VA. That was the first statewide ad he did. It was very powerful. It became part of his narrative the entire rest of the several months that he campaigned. He's now the new governor. He leaned into this issue, and he won. It wasn't the first thing on people's mind, but when you use it to frame someone as outside the mainstream, as extreme, it's very powerful. And one more point on the polls. The younger you are, the more you care about this. Much like an issue like marriage equality, people, 18 to 30-year-olds, it's both higher on the priority list, and a majority of them think you're ignorant, crazy, or out of touch if you don't think climate change is happening, we're causing it, including a majority of Republicans. So this is an issue that the intensity is going to grow, the problem's already growing, it will be higher on the list. But even now, if you lean into this issue as an elected official, like Terry McAuliffe did, you can win on this issue, and that's why we're encouraging people to do that, and that's why we had such a great track record in 2012, frankly.
But in 2014, you're encouraging people to lean in. It's not a cycle when young voters turn out in any kind of numbers that reflect with the presidential campaigns. And you also have, so many red state Democrats. I can't imagine Mary Landrieu leaning in on climate change or Mark Pryor leaning in on climate change when they haven't leaned in on the issue, while they've been in the Senate.
Sure, well, you take priority issues, races for us, and you can go to our website, Give Green, you can see some of the candidates. So someone like Mark Udall. We just ran a $1 million ad campaign in Colorado attacking Cory Gardner for taking money from the oil and gas industry and voting to keep their $4 billion a year subsidies and talking about the Koch brothers' impact.
We're going to clarify that, right?
Go back on
okay.
that. The fact about the ad was true. Someone like Gary Peters.
The statement was not.
Gary Peters, 88% lifetime score in Michigan, running against Terry Lynn Land, a climate denier. He actually yesterday called her out. Where are you on the issue of climate change? Someone like Bruce Braley in Iowa, same thing. Someone like Jeanne Shaheen running against Scott Brown. So even Kay Hagan in North Carolina. So many of the people that we're looking to be supportive and already raising money for, they are leaning this issue. They've consistently supported EPA.
Colorado's a perfect example right there, right? Colorado is an energy state. It has been an energy state. We hope it will remain an energy state. And, Cory Gardner has a high track record with the chamber, very supporter of free enterprise, supporter of development of energy. Energy is the largest enterprise in Colorado. And you can't get Senator Udall really come out and say, yeah, I'm really for fracking. He says, I'm for fracking, sort of. He won't take a stance on the Keystone Pipeline. We really need, if you're in Colorado, you want somebody leading for your interests. And Colorado is heavily dependent. He hasn't really taken a stance on whether they're going to support the ballot initiative in Colorado to ban fracking going forward. If you can shut out the industry in Colorado, maybe you'd like that, I don't know. I think it would be pretty bad for the Coloradans and the economy there. And so, Cory Gardner stood up and said, I am for Colorado energy. And Senator Udall has sort of not been so forceful. So I think the differences on energy are pretty clear.
So it's a great example. I appreciate that. So we have a scorecard, as most folks know. Mark Udall has a 97% lifetime score. Cory Gardner, I believe, has a 9%. So they're very stark differences.
Good. We got 83 and 33.
Mark has a balanced approach. We don't agree with him on everything.
Like yin and yang here.
But he's leaning into calling Cory Gardner a climate change denier. We think that makes sense. He's leaning into the new energy future, which is wind, the renewables, and the investment tax credit, and things like that for solar and wind, and pushing efficiency. He's been a champion on those things, and he's campaigning on those things. So we'll see what happens in Colorado, but we think Senator Udall, who is the senator now, was elected with those kinds of leadership qualities, is again leaning into it, and it will pay off. On a ballot measure, we don't support banning fracking, but neither does the ballot measures. They either there are 12 of them filed, hasn't been clarified what one's going to do. It'll either have some kind of local community ability to have a say in it or have some setback. So it's unclear what it is. And we're not in the middle of that ourselves, frankly, but it's not a ban on fracking, but we'll see how that plays out in their elections.
One of them could be, though. There is the ban, there is a moratorium, there's all kinds of things. I think you're right. At the end of the day, there won't be an outright ban. But you do worry about shutting down the energy industry as the dominant industry in Colorado. That is a big energy race right there. There is a fundamental choice. Are you pro-energy in Colorado, or are you not willing to take a stand for pro-energy? And that will be on the ballot.
We're looking forward, and we welcome that debate in Colorado. It's a great swing state, and it's about you're going to have a vision for the future of an energy policy, which we think Senator Udall has, or a policy that's just all on one side. So we'll see.
I would encourage people to read Andrew Restuccia's story about this exact topic that just appeared in Politico. He traveled to Cory Gardner's district, and a great piece that encapsulates the issues. You talk about the yin and the yang. So we have Tom Steyer, offering to spend $100 million to get candidates elected who are opponents of Keystone. You have the Americans for Prosperity, $125 million coming from the other direction. Are we going to see just an ad war that's going to cancel each other out and just confuse the living daylights out of most Americans here in the 2014 midterms as this bombardment of ads and money gets thrown into this race? Let's start with you, Karen.
Well, I think it's hard to know. I think as we saw from the last cycle, I mean, people are getting, their bandwidth is getting a little challenged by all of this noise out there. And, your phone can't stop ringing, you can't stop getting emails. I think they want to be able to see some sensible people. I mean, the Chamber's political program is pretty robust. And we look at the races that we're getting involved in, and we want to find candidates that support free enterprise. We want to support candidates that can actually govern and that can actually win. And I think at this point, the American public wants to see some practical proposals, some practical candidates that are willing to get in there and lead and forge some consensus on issues. Because if you look at energy, this is the great energy debate, there's more commonality about we want to do more to have self-sufficiency in this country. And I think they'll be looking at that and asking candidates where they're going to come out on that. Because we all know that we've got to find ways to employ more people in this country. We've got to find more revenue in this country. We are broke. It's no secret in Washington. And you look at the energy industry, and it has a huge opportunity to contribute more to both of those structural problems in our economy. And I think that will make a big difference. And I think the noise out here may end up irritating people.
Gene?
So, in an ideal world, we support getting all money out of politics. That would be great, and there are bills to do that. It's not going to happen anytime soon. In the meantime, we play by the rules as they're written, and frankly, we're very proud. In the last election cycle, we spent more money than we ever did before on politics. And our return on investment, that is candidates winning races, 83%. I know you're not the political arm, but the political arm of the chamber spent twice as much and a return on investment of 7%. So and again, framing it on these issues. Going forward, our friend Tom Steyer, we need more environmental money in politics, so we're glad he's also part of that conversation. We're obviously in conversations with him on a regular basis. We're not going to outspend or outcompete at a financial level the Koch brothers and Americans for Prosperity in the chamber. But we want to make sure the conversation is framed sharply, and we're confident, if done so, we will win most of those races again in 2014. Interesting, go back to the 2012, one more point. I think there were 18 different races where candidates ran ads attacking the candidate for opposing the Keystone Pipeline. Over, I think, about $11 or $12 million spent. Not a single one of those candidates lost. So if they want to waste their money talking about the Keystone Pipeline in some of these places, so be it. We're confident that candidates who stand up, fight against climate change, fight for a clean energy future, like Mark Udall does, like Gary Peters does, like Bruce Braley does, like Gene Shaheen does, those candidates will prevail.
And do you think that they should have to come forward with proposals of what that means, besides relying on people in EPA, unelected people in EPA, that they should come forward and say what their proposal would look like so that people can judge what these proposals would be?
Well, sure. Senator Udall is the lead champion on two clean energy issues. One, the investment tax credit, which is expiring, which promotes, particularly for wind power. Secondly, he's the leading proponent of a renewable electricity standard, which require utilities to do 25% of their power from clean energy sources by 2025. So he's not just stepping back, he's leaning into the clean energy issue of the future. That's great. Gene Shaheen, as we know, she was pushing an efficiency bill on the Senate floor yesterday. So they're not afraid on these issues. They're leaning into them because they know that's part of the conversation that needs to happen. They have a vision of fighting climate change for a new energy future, and we applaud them for that, and that's why we're backing them up.
I like the fact that Sheryl Sandberg has had a big impact. Lean in, right?
She certainly has. A couple quick.
Is that a new word that she just started? I don't know.
Is LCV going to get? Are you going to touch the Mary Landrieu race?
I can't imagine we would, frankly. Our priority races are races where there's a sharp contrast on issues that we care about, like the climate issues we've been talking about and clean energy issues. Mary Landrieu, I think, has the second lowest LCV score of any Democrat. It's not a race that would make sense for us to invest in, frankly. It's not about controlling the Senate. We've supported Republicans in the past. We've supported Susan Collins in the past. We're looking at the race again. It's about people who stand up on our issues. Susan Collins, by the way, is the only Republican senator of all of them. There have been several votes who've actually stood with us, stood with EPA, to allow EPA to go forward to set carbon pollution standards for power plants. So those are the kind of folks we'll support. Mary Landrieu has consistently voted against that. We won't be in that race.
Energy money is pouring into that race. My colleagues dug up, I think it was $1.26 million in energy money going to Mary Landrieu compared to $369 million for Congressman Cassidy. Is the chamber want to touch that race?
You know, we have certainly, in the past, we have been in the race, and we have supported Mary Landrieu. Right now, where we are, this is very early in the cycle for us. This is the first time we've really been involved in so many primaries. That's where we are. When we get to past all the primary season, which frankly is not even until August, I think the last ones are in the first week of August, then we're getting into evaluating things in the general. So we have in the past. We'll have to see where we are in August.
Gene, Lindsey Graham is another senator who's up this cycle. EDF, Environmental Defense Fund, is supporting him, even though he pulled out of the climate negotiations a couple years back. I think former Senator Salazar's PAC is putting money into that race. How do you feel about some of your colleagues, endorsing and pushing Senator Graham?
You know, each group has to make their own decisions based on a set of priorities and where they invest. So that's their choice, and I think that's the choice that they made based on, I think, compared to his opponents. Lindsey Graham is better than the people certainly running in the primary that I saw. So that's their choice to do so.
Karen, how much bigger do you think the field is going to get for the chamber? I know you've just started running out some ads here in recent days. Is this field going to get a lot wider for the chamber going forward?
Well, we plan on being extremely active. And as you've seen, this is the first time we've gotten in so many races this early. I mean, we've been in primaries for several months now. And so that's a change in strategy for us. We want to get candidates that are firmly pro-growth and that can win. And that means getting in early rather than what we've done previously, which is sort of wait and get in more of the general. We're really in early in a big way. And you'll see a lot more ads coming in the near future.
I saw Bloomberg was talking about some of the latest ads and had a story out talking about how a number of the people that the chamber's running ads for were people who didn't vote to keep the government open last year. And that was something that you guys were very adamant in trying to keep the government funded. I mean, how do you square the difference there on something as central as keeping the government lights on?
I mean, there are very few candidates, and I would say this is probably the same for Gene, very few that actually get 100% record with everything that you agree in. We've got to take the ones that get over the threshold for us, get beyond 70% so that we can actually endorse them. We know that we can't get every single thing we want. It was an important vote. We felt strongly about it, but we want people, most importantly, that when they are elected and come to Washington, will do something. And we'll govern and we'll lead rather than being part of this very difficult discourse that we have now.
Do you see the EPA hanging over these red state Democrats who are running for re-election? The EPA regulations, which start coming out here next month and continue all the way through next year. But that rule, is that going to hang over Mark Pryor? Is that going to hang over Mary Landrieu?
It's interesting. I think that the EPA regulations that are coming out, obviously they've come out for new sources, the ones that will be coming out for existing in June, they really don't come into full effect a couple years from now. And that's when you're going to start seeing, obviously, a lot of discussion unless they are changed before then. And I think you're seeing people that are looking to run, looking to come to Washington to figure out how Congress can step in and have much more of an oversight function so that they can get better regulation out of the administration. They can get regulation that is based on sound science, that is based on cost-benefit analysis, and that includes significant input from the industries upon which they are going to be regulated. Yeah, they're going to have some hangovers for sure. Is it the make or break, EPA or this? No, we have to be, people are looking at a whole breadth of things, and the economy is one of them. What are we going to do to get the economy going? What does energy have to do with that? And making the case that we can get this economy back on its feet on a very robust energy industry that's committed to clean energy futures. And I think EPA is a problem because we have regulations coming out of the EPA that the White House, in its report that you pointed out, have said are not based on technologies that are commercially available. And so I don't know how you have an industry meet those standards if the White House's own report that they released last week said were not commercially viable.
Gene, last word.
It's funny thing about the EPA and this. If you just stood in the bubble inside the Beltway, you would think that EPA was this horrible book. It's kind of ruining job killers, energy tax, all the stuff you hear inside the Beltway and the ads you see. If you go outside and talk to the public, and we did a poll of 11 swing states in this election cycle, and asked a very specific question about EPA setting carbon pollution standards for power plants. 3-1 solid support in the states that Romney won and the states that Obama. Consistent across the board. And again, the younger you are, even more intense. So EPA, people understand, EPA has a job to do. Protect our air, protect our water, protect our health.
I think they're very popular. For that. It's a matter of how.
It's a question when setting carbon pollution standards for power plants. That was the question. People said, let's do that, because we certainly can't trust Congress to do that, because half of them have their head in the sand and think climate change isn't happening. EPA has a job to do. Let's let them do it. The public supports that. And people, some people are on the record against that. Some are for that. We're going to stand with those who stood with the EPA. That's what we did in 2012, and that's what we'll do this cycle
I think you have
as
to
well.
be honest with the people then and tell them how much it will cost, and let's have that informed debate, because we're practical. The cost-benefit discussion, which happens in political campaigns and happens in common American discourse, is what's needed. And I think that's what's lacking right now, is we've polarized this to be either or, and frankly, I think there's a whole lot more and in there than people want to
EPA
give
will
way to
have
in an
cost-benefit
election.
numbers when they
This
put
is
out their proposals.
Why I encourage everybody to read Politico on a daily basis. Every morning, tune in for your morning energy, and in your afternoon for your afternoon energy. Thank you guys
Thanks,
so
Dan.
much for coming
Appreciate
here
it.
today. Appreciate everyone's time coming today. Finally, a big thank you again to the American Petroleum Institute for partnering with us for today's event. Have a great day. We'll see you at the next event. Thank you so much.